No DQ Galaxy, we are live with a recap of AEW Revolution 2023. Somehow, some way, we're starting off this stream before midnight. That was unexpected, but we're here. It is still technically Sunday, March 5th, but it will be Monday in just about a minute. Shout out to everybody watching this live. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching for the first time, I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider subscribing and giving this video a like over at youtube.com/AaronRiftNoDQ. Now, let's get into the pay-per-view. 8 matches, less than usual, but that, of course, is because we had the 1-hour Iron Man match. We kicked off AEW Revolution with Chris Jericho versus Ricky Starks. In this match, the Jericho Appreciation Society was banned from ringside. That was the stipulation. Ricky Starks had his ribs taped up, selling the beatdown from the JAS on Dynamite this past week. Now, I thought for sure Jericho was somehow going to pull off a victory because the announcers were bringing up how Ricky Starks has the momentum despite the attack, and Chris Jericho is on a bit of a losing streak, all this stuff. But I should have known because on the Go Home show, Ricky Starks got beat down. And typically when that happens, the person that gets beat down comes back and wins at the pay-per-view. Back and forth match here. They did the hockey fight. They brawled all over the place. And Jericho was doing some slapping and showboating. That fired up Ricky Starks. Jericho managed to counter a spear attempt and hit the code breaker. Starks kicked out of that. They did the back and forth with the shots where the crowd was going boo and yay. Starks finally hit the big spear, but Jericho kicked out of it. And then Jericho applied the walls of Jericho. Starks countered it into a single leg crab. And at this point, Sammy Guevara showed up to break the rule and interfere, but Action Andretti was there at ringside to counteract Sammy. Jericho hit Starks in the ribs that were taped up with the baseball bat while the referee was distracted. And then Jericho went for the Judas effect. However, Starks blocked it. And then Starks hit the Rochambeau to score the 1-2-3 victory. So I'm glad Ricky won because I think he needed the win. I was just a little surprised, though, because Jericho has been losing so much at this point. But ultimately, it's the right decision. Ricky Starks should be elevated over Chris Jericho. Where does Jericho go from here? Does he turn face? We'll see. Time will tell. What's next for Chris Jericho? But yeah, really, really solid match here to kick off the show. And then we went into the final burial match between Christian Cage and Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Basically, this was a casket match, which I believe they announced the stipulation on Rampage. That's what they were teasing on Dynamite when Jungle Boy was in the graveyard. They had the casket set up on the staging area. Now the two went right at it. Another hockey fight like in the first match. And Christian tried to escape through the crowd. Jungle Boy went after him, threw a drink at Christian. They brawled back to the ring. Christian got the upper hand in the ring for a while. And then they ended up on the stage by the casket. And Christian had chairs placed in the casket. Christian was on the verge of hitting a concerto, but Jungle Boy did avoid it. And then Christian grabbed a shovel and tried to hit Jungle Boy with the shovel, but he missed. Jungle Boy applied the snare trap, used the shovel while applying the snare trap, and then Jungle Boy was going to hit Christian with the concerto. And remember, several weeks back, he was going to do it, but hesitated. This time, he finally did it. He finally took out Christian with the concerto, placed Christian in the casket, and then Jungle Boy shut the door and got the victory over Christian, finally getting his revenge, as I expected. Another good match here with these two. And also at one point, Jungle Boy did a dive off the stage onto Christian, who was down below. Again, right person won the match. At this stage of the game, Christian should be putting over the younger guy, and that he did. Now we move on to the Elite versus the House of Black for the trios titles. Crowd was loving this match, as they do for every Elite match, despite some people on the internet hating these guys. They got their fans, and the crowd was enjoying when Kenny Omega mixed it up with Buddy Matthews and Malachi Black. And whenever Brody King would tag in, things started to turn in favor of the House of Black. Everyone was brawling at one point. You had some of the dives like you get in every Elite match. And they brawled on the outside of the ring for a while. House of Black attempted to finish off Omega. They were triple teaming, but then the Young Bucks came in. And then Julia Hart tried to interfere. She grabbed Nick Jackson's foot, and that's when Brody King took advantage of the situation, but Matt was able to make the save. Julia got on the apron again, and Omega went for the V-trigger on Malachi Black, but missed and accidentally hit Julia Hart. Omega was by himself with the rest of the House of Black. Young Bucks got back in it, hit some super kicks. They hit the BTE trigger, but Malachi Black was saved by Buddy Matthews. The Young Bucks were going to hit the Meltzer driver, but Matthews hit the knee to the face, and then they finished off Matt Jackson with Dante's Inferno. Malachi Black pinned Matt. 1, 2, 3. We have brand new tag team champions for the trios division. I'm a little surprised. I mean, again, I think House of Black needed the win more than the Elite, but the Elite just won the titles in January, less than a 2-month reign as champions, and this is after the titles were vacated. I felt like maybe the Elite should have had a longer run, but at the end of the day, House of Black needed it. If they lost this match, like, where would they go from this point on? So I do think it was the right decision for them to win the titles. And now, of course, this will lead to all the rumors being fueled about Omega possibly leaving. I guess we'll see what happens. DJW sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Says, good win for the House of Black. Right decision here. They should be champs for a long time. I know a lot of people were happy about this finish. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of the hot potatoing of the titles, but I do think that they really needed it. Now, let's hope that they can have a solid run, at least 6 months, if not longer, and let's stop hot potatoing the titles for a bit. Maybe Kenny Omega goes for the AEW World title and goes after MJF or Bryan Danielson, but more on that in just a little bit. So next up, we had Jamie Hayter versus Saraya versus Ruby Soho, triple threat match for the AEW Women's title. Crowd, of course, was very much into Jamie Hayter. They brought on the outside of the ring, and Saraya got taken out for a while. Jamie hit her with a Uranagi on the apron. and Saraya eventually got back in, but then Jamie and Ruby double teamed her. They were punching her. Basically, Saraya was in the middle getting punched by each one. And then Toni Storm interfered. She got on the apron. And then Britt Baker got on the apron to return the favor. Ruby hit the Destination Unknown on Saraya, but Jamie broke up the pin. And then Jamie was able to pin Ruby to retain her championship. No surprise here. Match was decent, nothing too special, but it was solid. I thought it was fine. And the big angle was after the match. Toni Storm attacked Jamie. Britt Baker tried to get involved, but she was overwhelmed. And then Ruby threw Saraya out of the ring and acted like she was aligned with Jamie and Britt. But then swerve. Well, some people were thinking this was coming, but Ruby Soho made her decision, and she is going with the outsiders, whatever they're being called at this point, the freelancers. Ruby Soho turned heel, got the spray paint, and officially joined up with Saraya and Toni Storm. The angle was good, I guess, but I'm not the biggest fan of this Team WWE versus Team AEW type of storyline that they're doing, but they did it, and it's something that I think deserves the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they can build on this. Jose Garza mentioned perhaps they could do a blood and guts match with the women if they keep this storyline going. As a heel, I mean, time will tell on that one. She'll need to get rid of that music for sure, because that's a babyface song. So yeah, I think the angle, the execution of it was done well, and I'm holding out hope that they'll make this work good. Next up, we had Jon Moxley versus Adam Page, Hangman Adam Page, in a Texas death match. So Jon Moxley came out there. He was already bleeding. No, I'm kidding. He came out there not bleeding. But one day, Moxley just has to come out there with blood covered on his face, and we don't know why. They have to do that at some point. Adam Page has a new entrance song, at least for this show. I don't know if he will be using it on a regular basis. The song is called Ghost Riders in the Sky, and it was kind of cool. I was down with it. I say keep it as his theme song. So anyways, this match was pretty much exactly what you would hope for if you're a fan of these types of matches. If you hate these bloody, violent matches, then this was not for you. But if you love the violence, you love the carnage, these guys delivered big time. Now, I'm a fan of this stuff. Like, I would be a hypocrite to say that this was bad, because I loved Mick Foley's classic matches back in the day, him and Terry Funk and the exploding barbed wire. I loved when Abdullah the Butcher would use the fork as a weapon. Like, I love that stuff. So for me to say anything bad about this match would be hypocritical. So I'm not going to. I thought this match was great. I was very entertained by it. I was, dare I say, sports entertained. Sorry, Jon Moxley. But yeah, I mean, professional wrestling, sports entertainment, like this was just great. I love seeing two guys just beat the shit out of each other in a simulated fight, and lots of blood in this. I mean, we all expected it. Nobody predicted that Moxley would not bleed. Like, everyone was like, it's going to happen. I did a poll, 95% said he would bleed in the match. So yeah, it was predictable in that sense, but that's what people wanted to see out of this. They wanted to see the violence, and you had the barbed wire. Moxley brought out the fork, paying homage to Abdullah the Butcher, and they took numerous bumps in the barbed wire, and both guys were bleeding. Paige got busted open too. They had the chairs. One was wrapped in barbed wire, and Paige power bombed Moxley onto the barbed wire chair, and then Paige took the barbed wire and wrapped it around his own body and did a moonsault off the top rope to the outside on Moxley. And then Moxley took it a step further. He must have watched Home Alone 2 recently, because he had some bricks under the ring. Remember when Kevin threw the bricks at Harry and Marv in Home Alone 2? Like that's a classic scene. So yeah, you gotta love bricks. Bricks, lots of violence in this match. Basically, Moxley took Paige's hand and put it between the two bricks and then stepped on it. Crowd chanted, "You sick F" at Jon Moxley. And then there was also a chain, and Moxley gave Paige a pile driver on the chain. Paige did get back into it, sent Moxley into a barbed wire board that was on the outside, and then later Paige was on the top rope and he got knocked off the top onto another barbed wire board that was on the outside. He barely beat the 10 count. It was, submission or last man standing. Moxley hit a low blow, which was legal in this match. And Paige was able to recover from that somehow. He hit Moxley with the brick. Here's bricks for you, Jon Moxley. You brought him into the match. Paige then hit the buckshot lariat, hit a second one that sent Moxley over the top rope. And while this was going on, Paige had the chain, and then Paige took the chain and choked Jon Moxley, who had been sent over the top rope. And this was a great visual. Whoever came up with this finish, brownie points for you on this one. Moxley actually tapped out to this. So, he really put over Paige strongly here. And maybe this means Moxley is getting his vacation. And I agree with Walter that they do the blood so much that it waters it down a bit. But this was a fantastic match. Just judging it by itself, not thinking about, well, they bleed on TV every week. If you take that out of the equation, this was an absolutely fantastic match. So I absolutely loved it. Great stuff. And I think they delivered. For the people that wanted to see this type of match, they got exactly what they wanted and then some. So big thumbs up for this. Absolutely loved it. Now we move on to Samoa Joe versus Wardlow for the TNT Championship. Unfortunately, I thought that this was not a great match. This was the weakest match on the show. I would say the women's match was better than this. Like, it just never really got out of that first gear, and it had to follow the Texas Deathmatch. So it was pretty much put in the death spot of the show. Powerhouse Hobbs was watching with his Sonic the Hedgehog ring in one of the arena suites. So they're really trying to build that up for Dynamite. Match was fine, but man, Wardlow has cooled off so much. He didn't even get that monster pop that he would get back in the day, like a year ago, less than a year ago. He destroyed MJF, less than a year ago at Double or Nothing. So Wardlow dominated early on. Joe eventually got control, and Wardlow was selling his leg, but managed to hit Joe with an F5 and then hit a swanton off the top, but Joe kicked out. Joe countered Wardlow, applied a submission. Wardlow managed to get a foot on the rope. And then Wardlow made a comeback, applied his own version of the rear naked choke on Joe, and Joe passed out. And this finish came out of nowhere. It was weird because I thought maybe Wardlow would win with the power bomb or something. Like, this finish just came out of nowhere, and it kind of felt flat. The crowd popped to a degree, but it wasn't like overwhelming or anything. So yeah, I was pretty disappointed with this match. Like, I definitely think it could have been more intense, and you could have definitely had a more climactic finish. So yeah, Wardlow's champ again, and on one hand, he needed to win this, but on the other hand, like him being in the TNT title picture just seems like he's on a treadmill. Like there's no upward elevation for this guy. Like he's just kind of stuck in this TNT title picture. So overall, like this was the weak part of the show. It wasn't bad, but they could have not had this match on the show, and I think it would have been a stronger show. DJW sent in a $2 super chat. Has Moxley ever tapped before? He does not recall. If he has, it's very rare. Maybe he did in WWE as Dean Ambrose, but not often. If he did, it was maybe when he was a heel in the Shield, but he rarely jobbed as part of the Shield. So I don't know. And he was a babyface for the rest of his run up until 2018. Somebody out there, if you recall him tapping out, let us know. And yes, as Walter points out, another hot potato title change. Again, they need somebody to hold on to that title for a while, but I don't think Wardlow's the guy. So I feel like he needs to lose the title. It's just like, a never-ending thing here. Wardlow needs to get out of this title picture. So maybe they could do a triple threat for the title, and he doesn't have to take a pin, and then that person can hold the title for a while. But yeah, kind of a rough spot here for the title and for Wardlow. And then next up, we had the Guns defending their tag team titles against the Acclaimed, Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal, and Orange Cassidy and Danhausen. Basically a comedy match, which is fine. There was a place for it on this show, and it was kind of like a buffer. So was Wardlow versus Samoa Joe, a buffer between the Texas Deathmatch and the main event. Jeff Jarrett in there with Orange Cassidy, and Cassidy was mocking Jeff Jarrett's strut. And the best part of the match was when Satnam Singh got involved. He was interfering, and because it's a four-way, there's no DQ. So he got into the ring, and then Danhausen got in the ring to confront Satnam. Orange Cassidy hit a punch to Singh, and then Billy Gunn hit the Fameasser on Singh. This was the highlight of the match. The Guns came in, gave a low blow to their dad, took him out of the equation. According to Caleb Jacobs, Moxley tapped out to The Undertaker and Daniel Bryan. So there you go. So Cassidy, not Orange Cassidy. Wait a minute. Max Caster sounds a lot like Cassidy. Max Caster of the Acclaimed hit the mic drop. Pin attempt was broken up. Jarrett tried to use his guitar, but that backfired on him. And Jay Lethal used the Golden Globe on Caster, but Caster managed to kick out. Jeff Jarrett and Aubrey Edwards had a shoving match, and then Danhausen tagged back in only to get double teamed by the Guns. They hit their finisher, 310 to Yuma, something like that, and they retained 1, 2, 3. Whatever. The Guns as champions, transitional champions, and sure enough, after the match, they were interviewed by Renee Paquette, and all of a sudden, FTR makes their return from their little break. They're back. They laid out the Guns. Somehow, Dax Harwood got busted open, taking a page out of John Moxley's book. Like they were beating up the Guns, and somehow Dax got busted open. They hit the Shatter Machine, Spike Pile Driver, and they made it clear they want the AEW tag team titles. If it was me, I would have just had the Guns come out on this show and issue an open challenge, FTR accept, win the titles, and end the Guns' run as champs. Like they were clearly transitional champions, but they're going to drag this out a little bit longer. I suspect FTR will win the tag team titles, and they're sticking around in AEW. So yeah, Did not need this match on the pay-per-view, but it was cool that they at least brought out FTR at the end. Now, DJW sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you. Much appreciated. Says, bathroom break match, easy prediction, Aaron, LOL. Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't completely sure the Guns were retaining in this one just because I felt like they were transitional champions, and I felt like if FTR were coming back, they were going to be in this match. But hey, at least FTR is back now, and get the titles off the Guns as soon as possible. That's all I got to say. All right, so now we move on to the main event. MJF versus Bryan Danielson, 1 hour Iron Man match. I'll try to recap this fairly quickly without going into too many details since it was an hour-long match. All I can say is off the bat is if you didn't see the match, go see it. Buy the replay. If you did not watch the pay-per-view, I mean, in my opinion, this was not just the best Iron Man match of all time. I think it was. I think it easily surpasses Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. That might be a controversial take, but I was never a huge fan of that Iron Man match. And I think it was better than Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar. I think it was better than The Rock versus Triple H. That might get me some heat. I think this was the best Iron Man match of all time. I think they took all the things that worked in previous Iron Man matches and used those and turned it into their own work of art. It was beautiful. So anyways, MJF had a special entrance, string ensemble, wearing his devil mask, and beginning of the match, you know, as you would expect, pretty slow. MJF stalling for time. Bryan was out wrestling him, doing some jumping jacks. MJF going for the handshake, and then he would slip to the outside again, and even made a reference to Dave Meltzer, said that Dave's going to take a star out of the match. Spoiler alert, I don't think MJF's losing any stars for this match. He's probably getting as many as Meltzer tends to give out. So anyways, a little controversial moment in the early moments of the match. MJF was on the outside of the ring, and MJF threw a drink at a young fan, right in the young fan's face. And apparently the fan was very unhappy, and the mom was not happy, and some people had to calm them down, and I guess the kid was okay in the end. But yeah, like the kid was legitimately not happy about what happened. So yeah, MJF, he likes to push the envelope when it comes to being a heel. Building Nexus with a $2 super chat says, matches that good could destroy Max's heel heat. I mean, yeah, MJF should be a babyface. I've said this before. Like, I think last year when he was on the verge of turning face, like he can throw a drink in a kid's face and people are still going to cheer him. So, you know, you're just fighting it at this point. Match went on, and MJF was controlling it for a while. And then about 23 minutes in, they went on this long back and forth with near falls, one after another, kept rolling each other up, reversing it. Bryan then, around 25 minutes in, hit the running knee and scored the first pinfall victory. MJF decided to take a chance. He hit a low blow, which caused a disqualification, giving Bryan the second fall. But because of the low blow, MJF was able to score not one, but 2 straight falls. In this match, once there was a fall, the match just continued. No break period or anything. So MJF got 2 straight falls, and it was tied up 2-2. And MJF kept taking some water breaks, and Taz was like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be taking those kind of water breaks in a match like this. Bryan was regaining control, and MJF was in a submission. He yelled out, I hate you, at Bryan. MJF did escape the submission, though. and then they fought on the outside of the ring. MJF placed Bryan on the announce table, went up to the top and hit a flying elbow, putting Bryan through the table. And then Bryan barely beat the 10 count. MJF took him back outside, gave him a pile driver on the broken table, and MJF was selling his knee. Bryan got busted open. And again, I agree with Walter Cruz. You know, they kind of overdo it with the blood. And this match didn't really need the blood, but they were using every trick in the book here to put out an all-time classic. MJF hit the Heat Seeker, got the pinfall to make it 3-2 in his favor. And MJF started getting cocky and arrogant, said, "You effing suck" to Bryan, but used the actual word. MJF continued to deliver punishment. Match hit the 45-minute mark. And as you know, once it gets down to the last 15 minutes, that's when things really start to kick into high gear. Bryan made a comeback, hit a diving headbutt, busted open MJF, and he hit the running knee, tapped out MJF to make things tied at 3 apiece. We were down to around 10 minutes left in the match. They exchanged their signature submission holds. MJF on the verge of winning, but Bryan got his foot on the rope. They traded blows, the boo, the yay. They kept trading shots. They both went down. Crowd chanted, "This is awesome." Less than 4 minutes to go. MJF hit the Heat Seeker again, but this time Bryan kicked out. Then MJF hit an avalanche tombstone pile driver. Could not make the cover, though, because his knee was giving him problems again. And then we had about a minute left. Bryan applied the single leg crab. MJF was teasing the tap out, but stopped himself and managed to hold out to the end. Match ended. It was tied 3 apiece. MJF was declared the winner by default. Well, still the champion, not the winner. I should say he retained the title. It was a draw. But then, as officials were checking on them, they were giving MJF oxygen. Tony Schiavone got a message from Tony Khan, and I was expecting this because this Iron Man match started really early, like 10:30 Eastern time. And these pay-per-views, you know, can go upwards of 4 hours. So I'm thinking to myself, they're probably doing sudden death. So that was the only negative about this, because it started so early. And I'm not arguing to make it start later, because I'm kind of glad this ended a little bit earlier. But yeah, that kind of gave away that this was going to be sudden death. And sure enough, Tony Khan told Justin Roberts via Tony Khan the match was going to continue to sudden death until there was a winner. So MJF was rolled up by Bryan, but MJF kicked out. MJF hit a low blow while the referee was distracted. He was in desperation mode. And Bryan kicked out somehow. Nice little callback to earlier. He did not kick out of the low blow. And then MJF grabbed the AEW title. Referee told him, if you use it, you're losing it. So MJF gave it back, but it was a little swerve. MJF grabbed the Dynamite Diamond ring. However, Bryan countered with a reverse Hurricane Rana and then hit the running knee again. But this time, MJF kicked out. Great near fall here. And then Bryan applied the half crab again. Referee took away the diamond ring. People really thought this was going to be the end of it. But MJF did manage to grab the rope and then immediately tapped out. And by the way, before the match ended at the 60-minute point, MJF did tap out immediately after the 60 minutes. And this time, Bryan thought he had the match won because he heard the tap out. MJF rolled to the outside, grabbed the oxygen tank that was still out there, and hit Bryan with the tank while the referee was not looking. And then MJF applied Bryan's own submission, the label lock. Bryan kept fighting, but eventually he had to tap out. MJF wins 4-3, which is what I think I predicted when we did our video earlier this week. So MJF retains the title. And, I loved this because MJF, other than the low blow, which, you do the low blow, you're going to lose a fall. MJF held his own through the entire first hour. And that was all he was really obligated to. And he can say that. He can go out there and say, I technically retained the title. So Tony Khan pulling this stunt on me, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. And he did cheat in the sudden death. He was really trying to cheat with the title, with the dynamite ring, and then he did use the oxygen tank. So, MJF can justify it in his own way. But yeah, he held his own. And this, MJF was already high up on the totem pole. And this just elevated him even more. Like, this was exactly what he needed. Bryan put him over. MJF held his own. 70-minute match. One of the best matches I've ever seen. Like, it was absolutely a classic. And I think this is going to be hard to top as far as match of the year goes. DJW sent in a $5 super chat, says, Bryan Danielson tapped and Moxley tapped in the same pay-per-view. That's history in pro wrestling. AEW homegrown stars definitely got their shine tonight, ultimately. And that's what it should be. At the end of the day, you have to build your homegrown guys. You don't want the reputation of being the company that just signs the former WWE guys. I mean, this is what you needed. And whether you think they're the right guys or not, some people would argue they're too small, but MJF, Jungle Boy, Hangman Adam Page, they're the homegrown guys. And at the end of the day, they're the guys that should be going over. Building Nexus with a $2 super chat says, if CM Punk comes back, they could do a double turn. Ooh, I would like that. I hope he comes back. And whatever beef there is, I hope they resolve it. Kenny Omega versus MJF is another possibility, but man, CM Punk coming back and doing a match with MJF, I think that's money. And I think Kenny Omega versus MJF is money. I really think that's a strong possibility for MJF's next program. And Dylan Hensley sent in a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you for that, Dylan. Much appreciated. Says, this was a great match. Both men killed it. I still don't like the Iron Man stip as it conditions fans to only pay attention to the end. I prefer just having a long match instead, but the match and show were still great. That's why I argue that they should do multiple falls. I get what WWE was going for in 96 with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. The fact that neither guy could beat the other one in an hour, like, it elevates both guys that neither one could score the pin. But it kind of made for a boring match until the end. When you do the multiple near falls, it kind of makes you have to pay attention because you're like, well, somebody could lose at any time. And you want to keep up with what's going on. So when it comes to Iron Man matches, I've always been a fan of doing multiple falls. And I think like 3-4, what they did was the perfect amount. Like, you don't want to go like 7, 8 or some crazy number like that, but you definitely want to do some falls and keep things interesting throughout the match and change things up. They started slow, they built it up, and they did the callbacks, which was really good. So yeah, just work of art, great stuff. So as far as the entire show goes, I would have cut out 2 matches. Thus, I cannot go with an A+. I really want to, though. The main event was A+, and the Texas Deathmatch was A+. But I think they could have cut out the TNT title match. They could have cut out, and I'm a fan of having all the titles defended on pay-per-views. But when you're doing an Iron Man match, obviously you have a shorter card. I would have cut out the tag team title match too, or just did the FTR accepts an open challenge, quickly beats them, and then the Guns can get their rematch and lose on TV or something like that. But I would have cut out those 2 matches. If this was a little bit of a shorter show without those 2 matches, I think I would have gone A+. I'm going to go in A. Excellent show. AEW delivers big time once again. Highly recommend it. I mean, the Iron Man match, best one. Texas Deathmatch, one of the best ones I've ever seen. You know, great brawl. And the trios match was really fun. Everything was strong, except for, like I said, the TNT title match was okay. And the tag team match was entertaining for what it was, but did not necessarily need to be on this show. And the crowd was great. San Francisco, as usual, AEW crowds are almost always really strong, and this was no exception. And as far as bathroom break matches go, you know, first of all, a shorter pay-per-view makes it a little bit easier, and you can do longer video packages. I think WWE does it well. They do the video packages, and then they have like a little featurette on a certain wrestler, and that gives people the time to make the bathroom break. I like that better than having like a buffer match. Like, if the match isn't worthy of being on the pay-per-view, don't put it on the pay-per-view. Have an extra video package, you know, just to refresh fans. Like, some of these matches, it's just like one match and then they go right into the second match, and there's like no video package or anything to just give people a little reminder of what's going on in the story. But all in all, great show. And I liked that it ended before midnight. I still would prefer if they did like 7 to 11. Tony Khan, don't think you're watching this, but that would be my request. 7 to 11, 4 p.m. Pacific. The people on the West Coast, they can watch it an hour earlier. 7 to 11 would be ideal, in my opinion. And don't go any longer than that. Like 4 hours, you know, you're giving people their money's worth for $50. That's fine and dandy. 7 to 11, perfect. And if you want to do 7 to 10:30, even better. But I get the 4 hours. I can accept that if you start the show an hour early. Building Nexus with a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, Omega MJF happens, they can play off Kenny's contract. Well, yeah, they could. I mean, MJF also with his contract apparently being up, but I'm expecting that now that Omega is no longer a trios champion. I mean, that makes sense to me. Omega is a babyface going for MJF, and that's one feud we haven't seen yet. I don't know if they've ever had any kind of interaction up to this point. If they have, let me know in the chat room, but I don't think they have. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to what's up next. And they're returning to Las Vegas for Double or Nothing. And I say MJF versus Kenny Omega. That's my opinion. Thank you all for watching. If you're new to the channel, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. YouTube.com/AaronRiffNoDQ. I will be back for the post Monday Night Raw recap. I hope to see you all there. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. And remember, say yes to NoDQ.com, and I will see you all next time.